I'm Brandon Isle with BYU-Idaho Radio, and joining me in the Spori Art Gallery is Darren Clark. He is the person behind all the photographs in this new exhibit called A Quiet So Absolute. Darren, it's so fun to be here looking at your photography. These pictures are so great, and we're here at the beginning. Tell me just first, why are we calling it A Quiet So Absolute?
Well, I've been making photographs not necessarily for this exhibit, but I've been making these types of photographs for a long time. And there's a photographer I admire who writes and photographs, Robert Adams. And he wrote a book that I've referred to quite a bit called Beauty and Photography. No, I think it was, this book was Why People Photograph. And there was an essay in there called In the 20th Century West. And he was talking about Western issues and how a photographer can approach that. And he starts out that essay saying, on the prairie there is sometimes a quiet so absolute that it allows one to begin again to love the future. And then he goes on and talking about kind of complexities of the West. But I've always liked that statement. On the prairie there is sometimes a quiet so absolute. So I'm using that word prairie. I'm kind of expanding that out to include sagebrush, snowscapes, seascapes, agriculture, and there are photographs of the prairie in here. But this idea of just quiet, contemplative photographs is sort of the underlying kind of overarching theme of this exhibition.
Yeah,
So.
It's so interesting. As you walk into the exhibit, the very first thing you see is sagebrush, and it kind of fades into the background. Is this a local picture?
Yeah, that's near one of my favorite places in the world, Mud Lake, Idaho. And I don't say that sarcastically. I love the area around Mud Lake.
There's a few pictures from Mud Lake in here.
But I do really love ordinary places. I grew up in this area, and I sort of like, I don't even know if it's a challenge. Some people might consider it a challenge to make interesting photographs in ordinary places, but I think I make my best photographs in places that I know very well, and I do know this area very well. And so, yeah, there was also this idea of if you start looking at all the photographs, the horizon either disappears to nothing or the horizon you can kind of see forever. And that, I don't know what that means, but that was another thing I was looking for. I didn't want mountains on the horizon or buildings. I just wanted this whooshy, gooshy, go forever kind of thing.
That idea of the hopeful future, I guess.
And the future is open, and it's not always easy, but, and you know, it has to do with this life and eternities and other things. So.
Yeah. Often in the exhibits in the Spori, we have painters or different mediums, but this is photography. And a lot of people think they can take pictures, but it takes a lot of patience. And I imagine you had to wait at the right moment to get these photographs.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it overly complicated. Photography, on the face of it, is very easy. You lift up your camera and you photograph a horse and it looks exactly like a horse. And the same isn't true about painting or drawing. And so the thing that makes photography easy, perhaps, is what makes it difficult. How do you make photographs that are important when everybody can make a photograph? And I don't even remember the original question, but they did take a lot of patience. I mean, I seek out places. It takes a long time to find the places that I want to photograph, but also waiting for light, getting up very early to be there before the sun rises, staying late, waiting out storms or embracing storms. So yeah, I guess patience, but I'm a patient guy. I don't got a lot going on in my life, and so this sort of thing is what I'm all about.
Yeah,
so.
And you teach this. Like this,
I do,
This is what you do here at BYU-Idaho, and it's so cool to see so much of your work in one place. And there's so much of it, and especially the medium of photography, you can take 100 photographs pretty quick.
Yeah, about 2 seconds on one camera.
Right, that's a good camera. But you're able to see some of your outtakes, I guess you call them, in a screen as you come in.
Like when you come in, there'll be a television or a monitor or whatever that has, I think, 240 photographs that I thought about using for the show that, you just had to make decisions. And so those will be looping through, but most of the exhibit consists of prints on the wall, but there are some other kind of fun things too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's dive into some of these other photographs in the exhibit. As we come to the right, we see two larger photographs. One is craters of the moon, and one is the Atlantic Ocean. So two very different places, two very different scenes, but a similar composition. Can you tell me about these?
And you'll notice there are, I think, we'll go to some of the others, but I have some of these pairings. And the idea is they're not the same subject matter, but and maybe subject matter becomes somewhat inconsequential. It's more about, I guess, I hate to use the word feelings, but I'll use that word. But it's more about kind of the overall feel of the place, the mood. And so both of these have kind of a dark, foreboding foreground. The horizon's in the same place. There's light reflected off water and light reflected off of this rock at Craters of the Moon. And they both, to me, had this sort of both beautiful and ominous feeling at the same time, and that's why they're paired up.
Yeah. As people see these photographs, do you think it kind of invites them to maybe visit these places in person at some point?
You know, we talk about this with my photography class sometimes. Like, if you look at a photograph and say, oh, I want to visit that place, does that mean that's a good photograph or a... And I often think that these aren't like travel photographs per se. Like, I doubt that... the Outer Banks of North Carolina would want to use this photograph to encourage people to visit North Carolina. So for me, if a photograph makes you want to visit a place, maybe that's falls short a little bit. For me, it's just a different experience than being there. I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, who would want to visit, like looking at this photograph of Craters of the Moon, it's like, oh yeah, I want to just experience the most bleak and forsaken place ever. But I do like the feel of that photograph. So maybe it's an interesting question, but I don't think many of these photographs are going to make people want to visit.
That's not your intent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's more the contemplative mood as you look at these.
Yeah, I think they are just a jumping off point to maybe think about life, to think about things, or just look at how pretty the light is. And people can experience, can do whatever they want with these photographs when they experience them.
And light is such an important part of photography, and some of these pictures are much lighter than other ones. Some of them, there's not a ton of color in them, but some you have the greens and the other colors that really stand out. We're looking on the east wall, and this is called The Color of Nothing, and it is just very light, not a lot of contrast here. Can you tell me why you chose to put these up?
So, The Color of Nothing, I've always been intrigued in the winter. Most winters, I was out of luck this winter. I would drive up on the farms, that would be southeast of Rexburg, the Walker area, the Moody area. And I just love the fact, when you think about it, photographs you're recording the reflection of light. And some objects have color, and that color the light reflects off that color. So the title, The Color of Nothing, there is no color here without light. It's just white. And so the only thing we're looking at really is a little bit of form with the different kind of wind patterns and slightly rolling hills on these photographs. But I like this idea of these are sort of photographs of pure light with barely anything to catch that light. And so you're just kind of you're paying attention to differences in times of day and subtle color. And then we did display them so that the horizon lined up in the same place in every photograph. But the photographs, sometimes the horizon's low and sometimes it's high. So I like that undulation. That's the reason for hanging it like this.
It's so fun. Well, these photographs were taken over several years, and you kind of have to dig in. You have a lot of photographs.
It was fun to dig into the archives. I mean, I've got thousands of photographs just like these. So it was a matter of finding. We printed about 20 and then chose 13, I think, and made tough decisions. But it's fun to dig into those archives and see what works with what.
Yeah. And maybe that's part of the life of a photographer, is making choices, right? You're making a choice of when to take that picture and then choices of what to display. How do you do that?
I've always told my students, really the only thing a photographer does, they have a rectangle and they decide what goes in that rectangle and what stays out of that rectangle. Now there's when do you hold up, when do you use that rectangle? And so, photographing is a set of editing choices. But then, yeah, the second choice and the third choice and the fourth choice, eventually you land at, okay, what am I going to exhibit? And it was tricky. I had a collection in my archives of possible photographs for this show, and I think there were 4,300 photographs in that. And these were the best of the best. They were edited, and so then from there it's okay. What's redundant? What's too much of an outlier? And it's a hard decision. But I've been working on it for a couple of years, editing, knowing that this show is coming up, and so. Yeah, it's been a long process. But I don't know. There's no easy way. You just do it. So
that absolute quiet of your office, right?
Sometimes. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to point out something that's really cool about this exhibit is we have a display on the floor. So that's unique in itself, that we get to see different images as they come up from a projector, just projecting onto this platform on the ground. Can you tell me what the purpose of this is?
So, as I was making these photographs, it got a little redundant, and I'm okay with that, but it was like all these bleak views. It was just trying to find photographs with nothing in them, and then there'd be little hints of things here or there. And I was really interested what was on the ground at times, and this texture that sometimes you don't get to see in the photographs. And the department acquired a drone a few years ago, and I wanted to learn how to use a drone. And so I didn't really have this in mind. I just started photographing, but I realized I liked the views straight down without any, sometimes you can't tell if these are abstract, that you're 5 feet away, but most of them are 400 feet away, right? And so this idea of just this, and I call this surface, there's 27 photographs here of different habitats that are displayed throughout, but this is just no sky at all, looking straight down. And initially I thought, what if we printed these and just kind of put them low on the wall? And I think it was Kyung, I don't remember how we arrived at that decision, but it was probably her idea to project these straight down. And there's some really talented people on campus that help mount the projector and help build the platform.
Yeah.
But it's a 6 foot by 8 foot platform that sits on the ground. And the idea is that you'll stand and look straight down at them, much as they were photographed.
Yeah, as I watch it cycle through these, it's just so fun. We're seeing snow, ice, sand, grass, fields, birds, so many different things. It's just cool.
Yeah, I'm thrilled with it, and I've never really done anything like this before.
Yeah.
So the gallery has been very supportive, and Kyung especially.
Yeah, Kyung DeBell is the curator for the gallery. It's so fun as we're on one side of the exhibit, to just kind of look across the other photographs. Is there a particular photograph that stands out to you, or maybe a series that you're like, I really hope people spend some time with this one?
Yeah, that's hard. I purposefully don't have any standout photographs. Kind of the idea was to just sort of have a quiet experience. And if you have a photograph that draws attention to itself, it perhaps takes away from the exhibit. But there are a couple of different things going on here that I think maybe people should know. One is, I kind of purposely didn't have, for most of the gallery, people or things, but I do have one wall that I'm calling, what do I call that? Participants, which is essentially, these are either animals or people, sort of whether they know it or not, enjoying these quiet spaces. And they weren't aware that I was photographing them. I just kind of stood back. And so I've got those displayed in a grid because they kind of would interrupt the flow in other places. So this participants is kind of a satisfying group of photographs to me. I do want to talk maybe about these photographs in the corner that might not quite be evident what's going on.
So this is the northeast corner that we're looking at.
Yeah, and I sort of call this idea, I have a little explanation here, folding time and place, but I've been experimenting with, photography is so much about a particular moment in time and a particular place. And that's different from painting, which can be you can work on a painting for months or years and you can include things from other places. And I said, why does photography need to be so locked in? Now, these aren't groundbreaking and like completely go away from that. But there's a triptych on the left. There's two triptychs on the left that will have photographs from 3 different places. So on the bottom, there's a photograph from California, in the middle, Florida, and on the right, North Carolina, all of oceanscapes with the horizon in the same place. And then what I did is use some software, in Photoshop, layered those together and used different techniques to create a singular image made up of those 3 images. So the right photograph is actually an average, I guess, of the 3 photographs on the left. And so the photograph on the right might have happened over years and over miles and hundreds of miles. And so there was something interesting in that.
Yeah, that's so fun. Like looking at the ones on the right, you wouldn't initially
it's kind of
realize what's happening.
Subtle. And so without an explanation, people might just be like, cool, walk off. But I think this explanation helps. So
yeah. Well, what do you hope viewers take away from your exhibit as they look at these?
They can take away anything they want from, these are pretty, these are boring, these are awesome. But I do hope that they're willing to look, and I do think if they spend the time to look, that they can have a pretty quiet kind of contemplative experience. That's probably my goal, but I wouldn't force that on anybody.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, Darren Clark, thank you so much.
Thanks.